welcome everyone to the Jio MAMI Industry session with producer, writer and director Sophie Hyde. Gratitude is always a good place to start. We have a room filled with some of the most passionate people I know, so how can I not lead with thanking the universe? First up, Sophie, thank you for doing this. Thank you, Australian Consulate, for partnering with us to create platforms for conversation across film cultures. And thank you, Actor-Producers Richa Chadha, Rima Kallingal, Annukampa Harsh, Arfi Lamba, Filmmakers Rintu Thomas, Sushmit Ghosh, producers Kartikeya Narayan Singh, Samir Sarkar, Mauli Singh, Apoorva, Bakshi and Mathivanan Rajendran to be here.
Thank you so much for having me here. I wish that we could be together in person, but of course that's not possible. But I feel also grateful that we can still do this kind of stuff where we see each other and stay connected across the world, which is great. I don't really believe that there is a way of making a film or a way of doing things. Is there anyone in the room that feels like they're early career filmmakers? You know, newcomers. Oh, hello. Are there people in the room that feel like they're mid-career sort of filmmakers? Yeah, great. Goes for a while, don't worry, mid-career. We're like, or emerging even goes for a while, right? You know, you feel like you're emerging forever and then you're like, oh, now I've done it. And what about established, like really established filmmakers? Do any of you feel like you feel like, yeah, that's where I'm at? Does anyone ever feel like that? I wonder. Yeah. And can you also just give me a sense of who considers themselves a writer?
Consider?
Maybe. What about a producer? Yeah.
I don't see Richa raising her hand at all.
And a director. How many directors? Great. Great. And how many of you are actors? Day to day, I'm kind of an actor. That's great. It's really nice for me to get a sense of, you know, where you feel like you sit, and that's not always the same as how other people see you. So it's a lovely thing. But I thought I'd start with my film Animals. So Animals was a book by Emma Jane Unsworth. The lucky thing about adapting a book, that you have a whole world to draw on. So your script, even more than most of the time, is like a blueprint to the work, knowing that you still have all this material that you can draw on and characters. I don't know about you guys, but for me, there's a script, there's a budget, and they're both maps to telling me how the film's going to be made. Animals was a book that was set in Manchester in the UK. The UK government didn't fund the film. You know, we had a hard time getting this financed, but there were people that believed in it and champions, and we kind of stuck by them. And to their credit, the producers really stuck by me. And we had a lot of conversations with people like, they're not very likable, the girls. And that's like the most common thing ever said about women on screen. Like,
actually, yeah. Smriti would know, I'm kind of living through what we're talking about right now. I just recently did a movie called Sandoshathinte Onnam Rahasyam here in Malayalam, which has like a couple inside a car. I'm playing Maria and she's angry with him throughout the movie. But in between, you know, I was worried how the audience is going to look at Maria. And, you know, I wanted them to sympathize with her. And I went up to the director and I'm like, won't she break down in between? You know, maybe get a little more emotional at some point. You know, because I wanted the audience to like her, you know, and sympathize with her. And the director was very clear. He said, no, she's angry. I'm like, but then, you know, I had to work with my inner bias to understand, you know, I understood the society was not going to break down her anger, but they'll immediately connect to her tears as a woman. But then I had to work within me, and you know, I had to reach out to her anger first and understand her better.
We all know that there is bias in the world, and there is misogyny and sexism, and it plays into this. So some of it is the truth. One of the things that I always struggled with about writing was this idea of your explicit wants. The character has a want. That want is very strong. And I was always like, I don't know what I want. Like, and I feel like as someone raised as a woman, you're often told all these things that you're supposed to do that aren't about your wants. It's very hard to go, what is it that I want? And I feel like we have very conflicting or competing wants that we can't name all the time. And I feel like there's something missing in storytelling. We haven't quite nailed it, or we're just coming to it, to kind of discover this.
Sophie, your producers, they stuck by you, and Animals did get made. And there are lots of producers in the room today, apart from filmmakers, who are also producers. How do you take that decision, even though, you might be doing something which hasn't been done before, or it's not so palatable?
I really believe in people. Like, so for me, I'm not somebody that's like, I can't wait to find the perfect concept project. Like, I'm not really excited when I get a one-pager and I'm like, that's a really great idea, because there's a lot of great ideas. They're everywhere. Like, what I really care about is people and collaborating with people. So when I think about myself working as a producer, not as a director, I have done that on several. I started producing because I wanted to make my own work. And when you're starting out, you're like, there ain't no one around, or there's nobody that's really going to take a risk on you. And so I started making myself and sort of worked out how to produce.
I'm also very curious about your transition from, being a writer, director, producer, and you have produced more than what you've directed and written. What is more closer to your heart, and how did this whole transition happen is what I'm very fascinated and curious about.
The truth is, I'm not a director for hire very much. Like, some people direct a lot because they go, I'm on this project, now I'm on this project, now I'm on this project. And so their directing muscle is very strong. But also there's a kind of, I think you have to be quite pragmatic to do that. I'm very deeply involved, like, and it means a lot to me, and it hurts me a lot, and it's hard. So I choose not to direct all the time. Like, directing is really ripping out your soul, especially when you're writing and directing, or like working with the writers, like, painful. And sometimes, and you guys will find this sometimes as producers, I'm sure, you're asking for things because you do. You're saying, could you just really tell me what the essence of this work is? Write it down. And as a director or a writer, you're like, where's the essence? Like, pull it out, like rip it out of your soul. And then someone's like, yeah, maybe. Could you give us another? And you're like, oh my God, it's not easy. And yet you have to kind of get thick-skinned and sort of do that. So I wish that I had producers around me who were like protecting me sometimes. I have had great people around me, but not always protecting in the right moments. So I try and be the kind of producer that is protective. They're both hard. Producing is like, it's thankless, right? It's thankless. And you can make money, but you also it's a huge amount of risk. You are creatively involved, but it's not coming from you. At the same time, directing, you get accolades. There's this beautiful moment when people talk to you about your work and you're like, that feels like I'm seen. But to get there, there's a reason that you get accolades, and that is because you are really pulled through the ringer, I think. And no, it's not for everyone. And there are times where I've felt too vulnerable doing it.
Talking about accolades, congratulations, guys, what a run, which continues.
Yeah, I think it's bittersweet because it's happening in a pandemic. I actually wanted to jump in about 52 Tuesdays. I find your process, Sophie, fascinating in that. And this comes from a sense of curiosity because Rintu and I had almost started work on our next feature doc. And again, because of what's happening, we had to pull back. And as we dive deeper into the research, we're thinking of pushing this into the realms of fiction because there are great possibilities over there. But then as we start debating, it also can be a hybrid doc. And I was very curious why you chose 52 Tuesdays to be the way it was?
I mean, I love documentary. Like, I really love it, and I loved it as I started making. But it's there's such a responsibility to the people in it as well as the audience, and I find it. I continue to produce them, but I don't necessarily direct them because of that. I'm also very, very interested in the way that fictionalizing stories kind of can get to another truth. Sometimes I feel like I'm separated from the truth of what I believe in a documentary when I'm making it, because there's a lot of layers. And in a story, I'm sort of trying to find something. So I wanted to make fiction, but I love source material, as in, like, I love the reality of things or having something to draw on, not just kind of pulling stuff out of somewhere. And so 52 Tuesdays came from an idea of shooting that way, before the story kind of came about. And it was a kind of experiment and an interrogation of what time does to a story and how it changes what you make and how it influences you. So it came from that desire to kind of experiment with that. And also a strong feeling that I didn't like the way films were being made. I didn't want to when I worked in film crews, I had a real problem with the hierarchy of filmmaking and the blame kind of feeling on a set, the feeling that, everyone was tense about everything, and it didn't feel like the way to make something that tapped into, maybe authenticity or like art. It felt like it was an industry, which is great, and I believe in an industry, but I didn't necessarily want to make like that. So 52 Tuesdays came from a sort of desire for those things.
You were talking about your process. I thought that in an interview you mentioned about the creative lab and the projects that came out of that, and I really loved the process of incubation and working together and bringing something to life in a pre-prod. Can you talk a little bit about that, how that came into being, and how a space like that can be really life-affirming for everybody involved?
Yeah, so Film Lab, it was called, and it was South Australia, where I am, and we had gone through a stage where we had a pretty good film industry, but no first-time directors in like 12 years with funded films. They wanted to change that, so they set up this program that was a lab. We went in as teams with an idea, not with a script, and they had to be made for a low budget. And the idea behind them was that they had to be better at a low budget than what they would be at a high budget. So something about the project had to be resonant with that. What was amazing, the greatest thing about that project was that we all went into a lab, and suddenly all these people who maybe you saw as your competitors, I don't think I ever saw them as my competitors, but they were the people, you guys, like the industry around. We were all in a lab. We knew that we were all going to make a film. And so suddenly there was this sense of like really strong connection between us. We like really asked each other questions and gave advice and worked together. What happened was all of that stuff about industry, all of that stuff got taken away. And it was like, what do you want to make? Like, so stop thinking about all the other bit and let's just do this. And suddenly you're really free, right? You're free not just to make, but to be around the people that are going to feed you. Like sometimes you really need to go off on your own, but sometimes working in isolation isn't the best. You need to, riff off other people. So Film Lab was brilliant like that, and we didn't have any market influence. We weren't allowed to have any market attachment. It was all designed to kind of take us away from focusing on that treadmill of getting things up. It was amazing. Like, honestly, I don't know if I would have ever made a fiction, drama, film if that didn't exist. I'm not sure. It's hard to imagine now, but yeah.
But that's unique to have a lab that's not market facing.
Yeah, exactly.
A big fan of labs.
That's liberating.
Sophie, I have a question. So it's obviously Animals was very irreverent. I'm still in awe what we see beyond the screen. And about any piece that you had to let go and it hurt you to let go and which we don't see in the film. And why were you convinced to let go?
I can't remember a moment that I had to let go of, truthfully. And that might be because I'm the kind of maker that's like, I've done it now. Like, I'm not holding on to it anymore. Those of you that are documentary filmmakers, there's a documentary theorist called Trinity Minha. Do you know her? And she's like, she always talks about what's beyond the frame, that in documentary you should be pointing to what's outside of the frame rather than saying this is it. And I subscribe to this idea that like you're putting something there that allows you to think beyond what's there. It's pretty beautiful. With animals, the film opened in the script with a really simple scene where Tyler came in and they were drunk and she did the caterpillar, like a really stupid dance. And it was a really gorgeous, simple scene. And just when we did it, I don't know if it wasn't achieved that well, it just wasn't punch. It just didn't do anything. And I really didn't want to kind of go for a kind of opening montage. But in the end, I really did want the audience to understand the weight of their relationship or the kind of texture of their relationship. And so we made a choice to do that there, to kind of build up that to begin with, so that for the rest of the film, it was just a given. You just knew something about them.
Considering the fact that you have obviously worked extensively in the documentary style, right? And then moving to the fiction narrative, how does that inform the way you handle actors?
I mean, part of that is like trusting them, the actors, I think. I really love, as I said, I love rehearsal, but it's not really rehearsing. It's like building a shared history together, a shared language, becoming intimate with each other fast for them, for the actors, and for me and the actors. I'm really very protective of the cast, like, and subjects in a documentary, but the cast, it's because I believe very strongly that they're doing something that's incredibly vulnerable, even in a really simple scene, that no one else on set is being asked to do. And I often feel like on a film crew, people can be like, oh, the actors are being a bit temperamental, or why won't they just say hello or something? And I'm like, no one else here is doing this. Like, no one else in the room is asked to just walk on and like give me whatever emotion it is that is required or whatever moment is required. So I kind of, my whole set is created to facilitate the actors.
We are producing this film about a mother-daughter relationship. It's called Girls Will Be Girls. And we have to cast like a teenager and a grown woman in her 40s. I want to be able to cast whoever, but this is the first time around that we'll kind of be doing fundraising and I'm watching everything from the other side, feeling frankly quite nervous. It's like hosting a big Indian wedding and with lots of guests coming with lots of expectations without any clarity on how to feed those guests and get the horses and the bands and everything going. So I'm really hoping for something where we cast somebody prominent enough and everyone else can then just be the director's choice or the casting director's choice.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Like, I've never felt like I had to cast someone that I didn't want to cast in a project. I feel like oftentimes there's an excitement, when you have a project and then the right cast come in. And what you're doing is really hard, because putting a new actor next to an established actor can be quite difficult because the style of them is so different, I think. It can be really amazing with the right actor in the older character, but sometimes new or first-time actors are very subtle, I find, and that doesn't always sit comfortably. So that's a balancing act. But I wouldn't think of it as a limiting thing. I think it can be an exciting thing, and you definitely don't want to be like, I'll tick the box with someone I don't want. Never. It's about finding someone that excites you and the sales agents.
I wanted to ask you a question very specific to the fact that, it's a female character-driven film. And as I was watching the film, I was very surprised by a few choices you made as a director. One, I saw that all your male characters were ones without doubt. They were very clear what they wanted. If you look at Jim, if you look at the other guy who's the poet. And the female characters had a lot of self-doubt about life, about what they wanted to do. And, especially as we move ahead in the film, and then we come to a point when Jim confesses to her that, yes, he did cheat on her. And she is unable to, she has doubt in confessing the same to him, and she goes and speaks about it to her sister. who, again, as a mother, has a lot of doubt about life choices. And I was thinking, you being a female filmmaker, and I was surprised about these choices you made about male characters.
Animals is a very particular thing, which is, all is told through Laura's point of view. So in many ways, we don't get access to the other characters outside of her. We talked a lot about that because, for instance, even Tyler, her best friend, you never really get underneath. You almost get no scene with her without Laura. So you don't know if what you're seeing is that character or Laura's perspective on that character. And I think Laura's perspective on the boys is that they're very clear. I'm not sure that they are very free of doubt. If I was to talk to those two actors, they wouldn't say that. But the way that Laura sees them is very much like there's a clarity around their life choices.
You've been on both sides of the fence as a director and as a producer, so I wanted you to talk about this equation, which is very specific when you are a producer and you're with a director, especially in the early stages of the project, Also in Animals, I loved how many things you touched, from coming of age to work-life balance to alcohol. I felt I'll not drink for like so many days after watching Animals. And then also, how there comes a point in life where all you believed in comes head on to a choice. You make a choice. She falls in love with a guy.
I think one of my faults is that I try and put a lot of too many things into things. Like, it's got to have everything, And I think the more, as you kind of move along, maybe I'm finding it easier now to be like, this one's about this, I've previously been worried that, you're only going to make a handful of things. You're going to have to say stuff and you want to put your values in. But in the end, like, what is vision? Like, it's sort of somebody somewhere in the project is guiding the project to, and then there is one thing that's guiding them through all of that. Like, it can be intellectually lots of ideas, lots of character ideas, but what's really important, what's like crucial to say or to feel. In Animals, it was probably more a feeling than anything, like a feeling of the world that felt important. I often find it's the end. Like a film, the end has to make sense to me for me to understand what the story is. And so when I know that I love a project, there's almost always an end that I know what that is, and that is unwavering. I do this thing, I was doing it yesterday, where when we first start a project, I ask everybody on it, and this includes the producers and the writers or whoever's on it at the time. We do a series of questions and I ask people to just write them down, the answers, and it will be like, what's the thing you love about the project? Write a big list, all the things you love, what are the challenges of the project? Is there a moment that really speaks to you? There's a series of questions, but one of the questions is, what's the non-negotiables on this project? Finding the non-negotiables really helps to find what it is, I think.
Right.
Everything else can be thrown out, but what is it that you won't get rid of, even if Netflix says, here's $10 million,
I wanted to ask, how faithful were you to the book? Was the end faithful? How much did you change in terms of the feeling you got when you read the book, and later when you saw your own film? Was it the same feeling you kind of went through? My second question was, what was your wine budget on the film?
I don't really like white wine, but there was a point where I really couldn't drink white wine after that film. Like,
okay.
Yeah, we did actually drink a lot making the film. I know that seems obvious, but we did.
Yeah.
It was a fun film to make. The biggest difference is, although it's a Manchester to Dublin, they're both great literary cities. They're both great party cities. I guess I went for a kind of dilapidated glamour, like a grotty kind of, they're kind of feathers and they're, like eyeliners and stuff. And the book is a bit more like hoodies and sneakers, and like they're a bit more sort of street, I guess. I had a lot of lines from the book that were really important to me, and they would be up in our production office, they were up on our sets, like they were everywhere. And they were really important to me. And they were a lot of the time what's still in the film that comes from the book. I think if you were to read the book, those would flow through.
And the cinematography was amazing. the cinematography. The way it was shot, it was beautifully shot.
And so was the editing. I think your husband did a great job at cinematography and editing.
Yeah, thank you. He's very clever. Yeah.
One thing that always fascinates me is the way a female filmmaker depicts sex on screen. Whenever you look at intimacy in films, with the male gaze present, no matter how beautifully it's done, there is always some kind of, I guess, for the lack of a better word, lust, which seems to be coming from a man. And when I look at female filmmakers shooting the same thing, you know, whether it's intimacy or sex, there's some kind of poetry, even if you're showing desire, which is there in your film, you know, and the way even the subjects are caught, it is just very different.
I really like seeing sex on screen and desire on screen, but yeah, I don't want it to be like I'm just watching characters have sex, like, or, you know, it's a kind of, you know, how does it feel to be in something rather than how does it look to be in something? And I think we have this shorthand for it now, the male gaze versus the female gaze. But I actually think, you know, it's a feeling space. I'm going to talk about a different film. It's not made by a female filmmaker, but it helped me a lot in this to unpack something that I wanted to do. And it was Call Me By Your Name, the film. Now, there is this great thing that happens in that where Elio, the lead character, is looked at a lot. You know, we spend a lot of time on his body and looking at him. And I wanted to do that with animals, where I wanted to see Laura's body and understand it. But I didn't want to look at it the way I was used to seeing women's bodies on screen, which is looking at their bodies as a sexual object, as the object of desire. I wanted to look at a body as the subject, the feeling of, you want to feel like you're with her. You're not looking at her, but you're looking through a camera, so you are looking at her.
In our country, especially, I feel we're still learning this because with the cultural environment that we have over here in censorship, I think sex is a very new thing for us to see on screen. And I feel we are still discovering that in our industry. It doesn't seem that natural. And that's why I was very intrigued when I saw those scenes, and they were just beautiful.
What I really enjoyed about the film is this sort of celebration of life that's just continuously there. And it just, you know, in the grossness, in the grime, in all of it, they're still always having fun, right? And I think that sometimes we sort of get lost in trying to show the pathos of things and trying to get into all of that, but they're always having fun. I think that was great. And I think another just sharing something that sort of like this evening or this afternoon, I guess, sort of helped coalesce is that the ease at which, you know, like I think you're sort of wearing multiple hats between writing, producing, directing. I'm saying ease at least in while talking about it, but I think that I think it's great for all of us, and there are many in this room who do the same thing, and I think that's a good thing to take away from today. So thank you for that.
Yeah, oh, that's nice. It's so true, and it's like we have this idea that there are these defined roles, and they have to be defined in some ways, but we do all kind of cross over them, and we all have skills. And sometimes as a producer, you're bringing kind of directorial skills, or as a director, you're bringing production skills. You know, everyone has their good and bad things, and you sort of want to create a team that balances each other rather than like has a job description, you know, to tick.
And also, Sophie, thank you for that baby wine moment. It was one of the...
Yeah, that was amazing.
I couldn't believe that was happening on screen. It was so much fun. Also, two women just having fun without a purpose in life is just uplifting and empowering to see.
So honest. That happens, actually. That kind of friendship happens.
Guys, first of all, thank you so much for making the time. And Sophie, thank you for doing this, and for everyone to take our time. I know everyone's really busy right now. But hey, we'll do more of these, and thank you for plugging in, guys.
Yeah,
thank
you.
Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you.
To watch all the Jio MAMI Industry Programme conversations, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Jio MAMI Mumbai Film Festival.